Yes, we'll be back from the break, and of course, it's exactly 5 minutes past 8. Godwin and Enid were actually early in here from the 7, that's the hour of 7 a.m. all the way down to 8 a.m. Of course, that is with Caribbean East Africa and the morning call, what has been happening. Well, hope you've had quite a great weekend throughout in that way, and definitely Smart Means Business is back, and I'm here with Masika Tsime, as we're going to be breaking down these business matters. And today the discussion rather is largely determinant on the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Africa. What are those businesses that can actually thrive in Africa? There is quite a lot of aspects to really understand because the environment and the surroundings where you are determine how far you will go to a certain extent. I must say, happy to join you here. Very good morning. How have you been? How was the morning? How has been your weekend?
Very good morning to you, whoever is just tuned in. This is Smart Means Business. My name is Masika Tsime, and yes, the weekend, we are glad that it's ended. Yeah, for some of us who love working, it's always a good thing that we appear every day, because that is what drives you. You know, being there and you have nothing to do really, it is also detrimental to your mental health. Well, and of course, we have many discussions. Yeah, that we're going to be looking into looking at the entrepreneurial landscape in Africa and how we can make sure that we are not, exploited in all this, given the the foreign interventions that come through to our aid. How can we use that knowledge that we get from them so that we can actually make sure that we incorporate it into our daily activities? But of course, here in Smart Means Business, we are always here to get you motivated and get your day started. And of course, we are always glad. What motivates you is what keeps us moving. You are the reasons as to why we wake up every day in the morning to give you information in line with business. Well, let's get motivated, and we shall be right back. Oh, well, of course, that is it for those that want to be actually motivated every morning here. And of course, starting narrow, it is good to actually start narrow so that you could expand with time. You don't have to start big. You know, when you start big, you may not really understand it very well. So begin with a friend. Your friend tells another friend, and then it expands with time. That is how it grows. You know, you just don't start with a huge. Even with I will give an example with people who start up churches. Yeah, they start with one person, and the other person gets another person. With time, it becomes a large congregation. So, if you're doing business, you could actually start small. Yeah, start with a few people in your family, your friends. With time, if what you produce is really top quality, yeah, it is good, it is actually on demand. Trust me, you're gonna expand with time. So don't rush into expanding. Start small, and you will grow with time. Give it time. Give it time to, really expand. Well, of course, that is it for our motivation, and we're 11 minutes into our second hour. And this is Smart Men's Business. My name is Masika Tsimi, and with Andrew Barije. Well, of course, today we're going to be looking at how foreign investments have hindered Africa entrepreneur ecosystem. And of course, most of these, we've actually had initiatives where we had foreign investors come into our country. And of course, one of the hindrances I think we are facing mostly is exploitation, economic exploitation. Yeah, they come in, and of course, at the end of the day, because give an example of Uganda, we have no minimum wage, so they are willing to offer whatever. Yes, so we find ourselves as Africans actually being exploited. Even with the very own resources that we have, we're being exploited. So therefore, that is one of the hindrances that we've been facing when it comes to the entrepreneur ecosystem. You do not have, okay, fine, they give you the knowledge, yes, but because we feel incapacitated, we feel like, we cannot do without them, we get exploited over time. Instead of getting knowledge from them, we find ourselves, working for them instead of using that knowledge and expanding ourselves in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities. And of course, we see also have inappropriate aid programs. Yeah, there's programs that you see over time that come to our rescue in Africa that actually, some of them are especially focusing on entrepreneurs, on the youth. Yeah, so definitely these programs may focus on providing handouts or funding large-scale projects rather than supporting development of small, medium enterprises, yeah, which are the backbone of Africa's economy. Yeah, so definitely they go out for the bigger fish. They forget that the small people are the ones that matter. Those people with small businesses, people that sell, tomatoes and, maybe have the small boutiques. So definitely inappropriate aid programs are actually hindered the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Africa. So I think that is what I see is majorly the problem here in Africa: exploitation and those inappropriate programs.
Yeah, well, absolutely. When we discuss foreign intervention when it comes to limiting African entrepreneurial system, last time we had a discussion which was relating to that, where we had to realize that actually the education system has kind of it's been a little bit, can I call it, contradictory? That is to the African perspective, whereby it's always been preparing us to just get jobs and so many other related aspects. Now, at the same time, there are quite a number of foreign interventions, foreign policy, which have actually hindered the culture of entrepreneurship that is on the continent of Africa. That is a fact. It's very much more easier for you to get aid if you are probably going to establish something that is going to process agriculture-related output, simply because that is what the foreign, of course, the foreigners, or can I call the Western governments, want you to be at agriculture. But when you see that you want to establish a manufacturing plant, that is going to be hard for you to get the funds. So
you have to work on their terms.
Exactly, you have to work on their terms. So that means that is limiting your entrepreneurability when it comes to diversifying in other areas of study. Now, according to reporting here, I see foreign intervention has had a significant impact on Africa's entrepreneurial ecosystem. Definitely, there is the good side and the bad side. Now, on the other hand, the foreign investment has actually provided much capital and expertise, that is to African entrepreneurs. On the other hand, the foreign intervention has also led to the exploitation, that is, of African resources, separation of African businesses, that is, and the imposition of foreign values and norms, some of them which are actually imposed on us, but when you go to the Western world, they are not actually embraced. Now, Africa is the home of vibrant, growing entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we see that in the recent years, there has actually been a surge in a number of new businesses being started across the continent. Now, this is due to this is due in part, that is to a number of factors, inclusive of increasing availability that is of technology. That is an important factor in here. And the growing middle class, yes, that is key. And the improving political and economic conditions in the African countries, despite a few disparities in other nations. However, we see that Africa's entrepreneurial system, despite all this, it's facing a number of challenges. According to a report, one of the most significant challenges is foreign intervention when it comes to limiting, the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. Of course, we have our own weaknesses as Africans, but of course, there are also other forces that are into play. Now, here we see that foreign intervention takes quite a number of forms here, including direct investment. We have military intervention. Now, this has been quite key. A good example is Libya, and economic aid. And foreign intervention can sometimes be beneficial, and it can also have a number of negative consequences for Africa as a continent from that perspective. Now, you need to understand that there are quite a number of ways in which foreign intervention actually comes in. You could be wondering, how is this happening? Like I gave you an example of if you want to get aid to start up a manufacturing plant, it's going to be harder as compared to processing agricultural materials because you're agriculture based, or if you want to get money to get trucks to till land, agriculture and all that, it's going to be easy for you. Now, foreign companies often come to Africa to extract resources like, of course, minerals. That has been key, but this can lead, Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, and some parts of Nigeria. This has led to massive displacement of people and exploitation, displacement of communities. And we know that the biggest perspective, because we are scaling it down to the local citizens who don't have big capital to start up quite huge investments. Now, once their communities are disintegrated, how are they going to link up with these communities?
And of course, there's also an issue of compensation. Compensation as well. So once they are displaced, compensation comes in late or it's never there. So definitely it's on them.
Exactly.
It's on them because the foreigners come with an understanding within the government. At the end of the day, you have to, ask government to come and intervene. Otherwise, because for the foreign investors, they had an agreement with the government. Or with whichever private entity they came with. They did not have an agreement with you, the natives of that land. No. So it's not up to you to fight. Well, of course, we talked about DRC. Well, I see because they have most of the mining areas, and most of them are exploited. Most of them are exploited when it comes to, looking out for those minerals. They do not have a protective gear. At the end of the day, fine, they get these minerals, but then the wages are very low. The state at which they get those minerals is so risky. So you find yourself, you are a business, you're into that sector, you're not protected, your wages are low. There is no way because at the end of the day, you took an initiative because they be like, okay, fine, we're not going to involve the natives, we're going to involve them more, but then they are actually being treated worse than they were. Because that's the land, that is probably the land they had to, use to, grow their crops and all that. So at the end of the day, they are displaced and, they're disoriented mentally.
Absolutely. All right, there are still foreign companies in here often use their power and influence when it comes to stiff competition from African businesses as a result. And now this can be done through illegal means such as lobbying for unfavorable regulations, through illegal means such as bribery and corruption. Now, lobbying for unfair regulations, that means these are regulations, for example, tax regulations, the taxes, and you find that these foreign companies have a big say when it comes to influencing government in determining policies, and some of these policies are dictatorial to their local Africans in that way. Now, of course, there are quite a number of incidences how foreign intervention has actually been a factor here. And one example in case is the Democratic Republic of Congo, which we mentioned here. The DRC is rich, we know very well, it's rich in natural minerals, but these resources have been exploited by foreign companies for over decades. We all know this. Now, this exploitation has definitely, like we mentioned earlier, displacement of communities and compensation. Sometimes some families are compensated, some are not compensated. And those which are compensated, it takes quite a huge time. Now, another case here is Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, but it is also one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Yeah, that is true. And now corruption has made it difficult for Nigerian entrepreneurs to get ahead. And foreign companies have also been accused of bribing Nigerian officials, that is in order to gain unfair advantages. And finally, the case of South Africa, where we see South Africa was under apartheid for quite some time, and of course racial segregation, and definitely apartheid laws made it difficult for the black South Africans to start businesses, as you can see that clearly. Now, if we are to sum this up, DRC is a home to over 60% of Africa's cobalt reserves, but the country's mining industry is dominated by foreign companies. In Nigeria, corruption costs the country an estimated of $15 billion a year, because the foreign companies lobby, influence governments to establish policies in their favor. And remember, when these companies make profits, they take them back home. Little is invested within. The people, the local natives who would have actually been able to do business and they pay taxes, which is revenue for the government, they can't do it because the policies are unfair towards them, so they are just out of businesses. And who is determining these policies? It's the foreign companies influencing governments to make these policies. And of course, South Africa, where we mentioned the aspect of the apartheid laws, which made it difficult for that to happen. So you can clearly see how that is happening. And of course, coming in down to the negative consequences here, the intervention of that is Africa's entrepreneurial ecosystem, of course, disproportionately affects ordinary citizens who aspire to start their own businesses. But of course, they face limited access to capital. That is a key factor. And they struggle to compete with established foreign companies, like we mentioned, and encounter regulatory barriers at the same time that hinder their ability to operate legally and effectively.
You see, actually, the issue about what you said right there about aid. You know, when these of course, they make the research, they come when they've made the research, you know, so when they invest in big projects, you know, because they know how they're going to have their return on investment. So they do not, you know, want to associate with the small, medium enterprises because they know probably they may get little. So they focus on the bigger ones. Yeah, so the smaller ones are affected now because the bigger ones have aid. Definitely, these smaller ones are going to find it hard to compete.
Yeah, but exactly, that is true. But you see now the aspect comes in back to the African governments who sell out their citizens. That's more like selling, I'll say, by the way, clearly, because some of the nations we've looked up to till today, Singapore, China, the United Arab Emirates, it was all as a result of empowering citizens. Because the role of the government is to make sure, because no country gets prospers if they don't produce anything. You have to produce something. You need to offer a service to the market right there for you to be prosperous. So it's the purpose of the government to empower you as a citizen to produce something, but also the role of the government to make sure that what you produce actually has a market where you're going to sell it out there. But we have issues of monopolistic tendencies whereby some markets are only supplied by a few companies, and now you find that these foreigners, when they come and they make these, they have the legal rights. I mean, they produce, they make these factories and they export. And I mean, it's a factory, for example, in Nigeria, it's exporting processed agricultural products. Yet it's not the natives that are producing this. And they just collaborate with a few citizens that actually have the monopoly. Or even sometimes these very farms have that monopoly when it comes to the export monopoly. In other words, whereby no other person can actually export except those, and that is quite unfair and unfriendly. You are limiting the citizens to an income, and these are the people that actually you're literally compromising your tax base to make things a little bit easy. Well, that is it for this discussion for now. It's exactly 25 minutes past 8. Today we're discussing the ecosystem in Africa, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Africa. How is it being affected in some sort of a way? And what are those businesses that can actually prosper in Africa today, in the Africa of the 21st century? Africa 10 years ago is different from Africa today. So if you still have the same investment mindset 10 years back and you're applying it today, you might find difficulty to penetrate through or even getting a market share of your product that you're putting out there. Well, when we return on this matter, definitely in the later hour, that is of 9 a.m., we shall, of course, dwell further on that and get to see that despite what is happening, how can Africa, of course, try? How can the citizens in Africa still try, of course, to make it through that way? But, of course, government is a big player because it sets the pace, it sets the environment, and other factors also come into play. But the government factor is play in influencing other factors to bolster entrepreneurship on the continent. Well, for now, let's take a break. And of course, when we return, of course, we have something from business and entertainment and sports. And of course, with entertainment, have something for the movie fans out there. What movies have been actually making money over the past weekend? Stick around.